So today is election day in America. So I wanted to create a quick little video talking about villains, and specifically how to create a great villain and how understanding how to create a great villain can actually help us save the world. Hello, my creative friends, and welcome to another episode of Fast Screenwriting Daily. Recently, someone posted in the comments, they asked if I was for Trump or for Biden. And the insinuation, the implication was that that would somehow determine what kind of a person I am and what kind of character that I have. Well, on the day of this truly historic election, let me just say that I am here not in the context of an artist expressing my point of view and how I feel about the world. I am here in the context of a teacher whose job is not to impose my will or my perspective or my point of view onto you, but rather to give you the tools and the ideas and the insights that my experience has shown me would possibly help you. Of course, I have my opinions and my perspectives, but one thing that I know that's even more important than that is what's wrong with our world today is the very thing that's keeping you from writing better stories, from specifically creating better villains. And that is a complete unwillingness to understand deeply, truly, profoundly, empathetically the other side's point of view. One of the biggest problems writers face is that they often have something to say. They often have a point of view that they want to put out there, a message or a perspective or an ideology. And they understand that point of view. They believe in those ideas so strongly, so firmly, that it's very hard for them to understand or see or contemplate the other point of view. But the only way you're ever going to make a compelling argument is if you present both points of view. Now, look, right now we live in an extraordinarily polarized and polarizing time. We're all living inside our bubbles of social media and not taking into account what the other side thinks or believes or how they feel, or more importantly, most importantly for a writer, how they came to think the way they do. The simple secret to creating an extraordinary villain is to understand their motivation, to understand why they think the way they do. When you first start writing and you're either taught or you discover on your own that the secret to it all is conflict, having a character who has some sort of goal that's then met with opposition to that goal, the act of overcoming that opposition and getting to the goal or not getting to the goal is what the story is about. Once you start to understand that, you realize quickly that a villain or an opposition character, an opponent of some sort, is necessary to making this happen. Okay, not strictly necessary to all situations, but certainly helpful for externalizing that action. Well, initially, that leads a new writer to imagine some obstacle and not really to think through the obstacle or the motivation of the obstacle, but just to think of an obstacle, which early on leads to very one-dimensional characters, one-dimensional villains, the twirling mustache bad guy who's tying the damsel in distress to the train tracks for what possible reason? That kind of one-dimensional villain is fine for a certain kind of story, but as soon as you start exploring some kind of a theme or some kind of an idea or message or something that you want to get across to an audience, we very quickly need an opponent with more depth, with more dimensionality to them. Otherwise, we just don't believe why they would be doing the things that you're having them do. And that's when we really start to see what you're made of as a writer. One of the most powerful things you can do for yourself as a writer is to go fully into the mind of your opposition, your opponent, your villain character, to understand how they work, what they want. The truth is, the villain is the hero of their own story. What is that story? What are they trying to achieve? What are they trying to do? And why are they trying to do it? If your focus is entirely on your hero character or your you character or the character that represents what you believe is good and right in the world, if your focus is entirely on them and you don't spend any time looking at the opposing point of view, that opponent is always going to be flimsy. It's going to be a cardboard caricature of what it actually is. Look, we live in an era today of information overload, and because of that, we have to filter the incoming information in our world. The problem is this leads us into our little bubbles, and if those bubbles become too insular, then the opposition, the villain, the opponent, the person standing in the way of you getting whatever it is you're setting out to get, can't help but be under or artificially represented in some way. Now, when you have two big giant factions that are each adamant that their way is right and the other guy is this flimsy cardboard cutout of a villain character, it's only natural that you're going to have polarization and division and an unwillingness to come together and discuss things intelligently. The solution to that polarization is the same solution writers need to employ every single day they write. You need to go deep into the opposing point of view and understand it, understand the motivations for it, and ultimately try to see if you can pull out the best argument in favor of your villain. What if they were right? What if this was the way to go? Well, isn't understanding that going to give your character the thing you want, the thing you're pushing for? Isn't that going to help them see better strategies for how to achieve their goals? We need to be able to see the human qualities in even the most offensive character. We need to be able to see the nuances and complexities of the argument in order to create better, more compelling, more resonant stories. Now, naturally, I believe this mindset is necessary to healing a rather divided world at the moment. But it's also important to understand that this is a choice. This is a strategy. This is a decision you make on a day-to-day basis. And when it comes to your writing, when it comes to the way you see and think about and interact with the world, I want you to get where you're trying to go. And part of the way you get there is understanding those people that would stand in your way. Because only by understanding them and understanding what they want and what they need can you find the middle ground that everyone can live with. If you have a good guy character who battles the villain, vanquishes the villain, overcomes, and then lives happily ever after, well, you have a very thin, one-dimensional story. If instead that character has to battle the villain and through the battle comes to see an even better alternative ending to the story, well, that's a twist that really resonates with an audience. When it comes to the big geopolitical things like voting in your political election, I'm personally of the opinion that it's better to have a more finely nuanced discussion, conversation, and reality than some sort of one-dimensional B-movie slugfest. So, however things turn out in this election, let's focus on telling great stories. Let's focus on understanding the other point of view, particularly that villain in your story. Personalize them, humanize them, understand where they're coming from. One thing I can guarantee you for sure, it's going to lead to a much better audience experience. Now, if the world continues to exist, the next video is going to be right there. YouTube thinks you're going to like this video here. And there's probably something cool on this side of the screen, but I don't know what it is. Take care of yourself. See you tomorrow.